I went from sevens into 15s where I have 26 15s caps. When you see the word Olympic for any athlete, it's the pinnacle of an athlete's sporting career. Here I am in a World Cup squad and in a home World Cup, which meant that your family got to be there with you and your friends got to be there with you. So lucky to play in front of a massive crowd in Twickenham against England. I'm trying to juggle everything, a new injury, a new baby and a new job.
I am Jordan Rushworth, host of the Athlete Sit Down with Sport Indoors, where we chat to inspiring athletes to hear their unique journey into the world of sports. Sport Indoors are a global leader in connecting brands with the ideal athlete to forge powerful partnerships and increase exposure for both sides alike. With access to over 5,000 athletes across 90 different disciplines, Sport Indoors is your go-to platform to find a perfect athlete fit for your social media campaign, brand ambassador role, or keynote speaking engagement. Joining us today is an Irish rugby union player who has played internationally for both the 7s and 15s teams, as well as being a mental health advocate, a mum, and a secondary school teacher. It is the wonderful Eimear Considine. How are you today?
Great, thanks for having me on, Jordan.
No problem at all. So, obviously you are a rugby union player, but tell us about your story and how you originally got into rugby. Is it true that you were introduced to rugby when you were 23?
Yeah, I grew up in Clare, in West Clare, and rugby was not a strong sport. It is becoming that way, but when I first started, it wasn't a big sport here in West Clare. It was mainly just Gaelic football and camogie. So I grew up playing them, and then I went into athletics a little bit. But I suppose when I was around 16 or 17, I had to really focus on one or the other. So I just stayed with Gaelic games, played for Clare with camogie and football teams, and had a lot of success with both of those and with my club. But I suppose I got a job teaching. I'm a PE and Irish teacher, and I got a job teaching in Dublin. And I suppose a new opportunity just came my way when the sevens coach approached me to play rugby sevens. And I suppose at the time they were trying to build the foundations for a sevens team for the Olympics. And they were looking at girls from other sports, like they were looking at girls from hockey, from basketball, from camogie, and I was chosen from football among a lot of other girls. And from there, I suppose it's kind of been a mad, like nothing I ever imagined really in relation to my sporting career. I would have always just dreamed of playing football for Clare, and I suppose once you get to that, you can't really get any higher than that, and you can't choose where you're born, so you kind of stick with where you're from. And then, I went from sevens into 15s where I have 26 15s caps. And I was playing for Munster as well, but I kind of did it backwards. So you're right in saying that I was 23, but I also played for Ireland sevens first before I ever played any other rugby. So I played for Ireland first, and then I played for Munster, and then I played for my club. So it kind of went backwards, and then I played for Ireland 15s. So the route isn't, I suppose, how they plan the player pathway to excellence, but it worked out, and I suppose I had to learn on the big stage really, really quickly. But I suppose the background that I had in Gaelic games prepared me for the athleticism. I suppose I didn't understand the game of rugby, but it had the fitness and it had the ability to learn, I suppose, and the basic fundamentals of catching and passing the ball. So I just had to try and learn everything about rugby then at the same time.
So you were originally a Gaelic football player. Tell us about your experience in the Gaelic games. How did it come about? What do you have to do? That sort of thing.
Yeah, so I obviously, when you're from where I'm from, all you do is football. And I've actually recently moved back teaching to a school here, and all they talk about is football. And I understand why my life when I was young was consumed with Gaelic football. But I suppose I played at my local club, Kilmahel, and then I played with Clare. And I played, at the time, I suppose the highest level that we were at was intermediate. We won one All-Ireland final in 2009. And I went on to college into UL, and I played at a really high standard with college football with UL in the O'Connor Cup campaign. So I've had a lot of success with that and a couple of league titles as well. And with camogie then, which I suppose is the equivalent of hurling for the men, at the time when I was playing for Clare, I was vice captain, and we had a really good standard and really good team, and we got to Division 1 league finals and we won Munster finals. So it was quite competitive. And I suppose rugby came at a right time where it was too challenging to manage both. Like I was trying to play football and camogie for Clare whilst living in Dublin and commuting up and down 3 hours every week and weekend, and often playing 2 games. one Saturday, one Sunday in 2 different sports. But I suppose Gaelic football and camogie gave me the basics for what I needed. And even though the GA is amateur, it is everything but amateur, except for that, like, it's all but amateur in how they do it and the training they do, the setup in the background teams, the S&C coaches, nutritionists, all that, I suppose prepared me for, Gaelic football, I suppose, is what I grew up with, and it's all about where you're from. And like I said, I suppose I bring that loyalty from Gaelic football into my rugby, in that I'm playing for Munster. Even though I lived in Dublin for so many years, it would have been easier to transfer to another province. But I suppose that loyalty of playing for where you're from, and I grew up in Munster, in Clare, wanting to play for my local club, wanting to play for my county. And I've transferred those, I suppose, loyalties into my rugby, in that I want to always stay playing for Munster, which is where I grew up.
So you then moved on to sort of rugby sevens, Irish rugby sevens. Why not go straight to 15s? Was it just that was the only option you had, or that's the option that came about, or?
I suppose when you get an email that says Olympic qualification, it's something that you just, as an athlete, even though it wasn't like Gaelic football was never going to be in the Olympics, athletics was, but I suppose I'd given up on my athletics career. When you see the word Olympic for any athlete, it's the pinnacle of an athlete's sporting career. So any opportunity for me, and it could have been any sport. It could have been, I don't know, badminton or rowing or anything. If they'd come with me with the thought that they thought it was good enough, I would have tried it. And I suppose, look, I'll give it a go. I will do a few trials. I'll do a few fitness tests. And if I'm good, well, I have an opportunity to play in a high performance setup, potentially qualify for an Olympics. And if I'm not very good, well, I can just go back to my life, which was fine playing football and camogie for Clare. I was pretty happy and I was being challenged in that capacity. But I just said I'd give it a go. And I never intended to play rugby for Ireland. It was never a goal of mine when I was, in school thinking, what do you want to be when you grow up? I never once would have picked a professional rugby player. But I suppose it just happened that way. And I suppose sevens was my only pathway to that. So 15s wasn't on my mind because, well, I didn't know the game enough. I didn't have a dream to play 15s rugby for Ireland. So therefore, I didn't understand or want to play 15s rugby for Ireland. But then when I started playing sevens, I suppose I really enjoyed it, and the opportunities that it gave me as an athlete, and I suppose the challenge that it gave me as an athlete to play week in, week out with high performance, with girls that are in a high performance environment, to play against teams that are the best in the world. You're no longer on an international stage, or you're on a global stage playing against the best in the world. And I suppose it was the next level of drive that I wanted as an athlete. And then 15s rugby, just, I suppose how I finished with sevens is that we didn't qualify for that World Cup or the Olympics in 2016 in Rio. And it was quite a full-time program, but I was still teaching full-time. And it was quite difficult to manage the workload. It was gym in the morning at 6 a.m, go to work, come back across the city, train, and just repeat and do it again. And it was just consuming. And I suppose at the start it was new and it was challenging and it was really exciting. And as it continued on, I suppose it became harder and harder to keep that same vibrancy and same energy for myself. And I probably did suffer from an element of burnout. And I didn't enjoy my sport. I didn't enjoy rugby. And I remember when we didn't qualify for 2016, I needed a break from everything. And I needed to just take time away from sport. It wasn't just rugby. I didn't want a scheduled rugby session, or I didn't want a scheduled football session. And I even remember my sister asking me to go back with Claire at the time, but I just wasn't able to, I suppose, commit to structure. And because the time away from rugby, and by time away, I mean, it was probably a summer of time away from rugby, but it was enough for me to regain a love or a passion back again. And I got called into Munster trials, and I went to Munster trials playing 15s. And when I say I knew nothing about sevens at the start, I knew even less about 15s and the technicalities around 15s rugby and how you, like, for example, in sevens, I remember one of my first tournaments, our coach at the time said, Eimear, you go play 9. And I couldn't understand the concept of how you could play 9 in a game of rugby where there was only 7 players. But I didn't understand that 9 meant the scrum half. It was the position on the field. And when I went to 15s rugby, they said go on the wing. They said go blind wing. But in sevens rugby, there's no blind winger. So it was like this whole change of, I had got so far with my sevens career, my sevens knowledge, and then to change that into 15s was just a completely different knowledge and expertise. And I was learning all over again. And it was so challenging. I suppose not even the physical side of it, but the mental side of learning a new skill at the top level. Like you're trying to learn it at an international level, or at a 15s level playing for Munster. And not that no one has patience for you. People were quite patient with me, but you shouldn't be coming into a Munster team having never played 15s before. And that just doesn't happen anymore. I suppose the pathways are there and they are in place. And I was impressed in that campaign with Ireland. And Tom Tierney, who sadly passed away recently, was the head coach of Ireland at the time. And I got an email from him, and I never thought I would ever play for rugby again, especially for Ireland. I thought, 15s is just for Munster for me. And I got called into Six Nations camp. And yeah, I've had a really good couple of years in with the 15 squad.
Yeah, so you mentioned that you burnt out playing rugby sevens and teaching. Have you sort of learned how to balance your career now and also your teaching responsibilities?
Yes and no. Sometimes I look at my calendar and it's so jam-packed that I'm like, why do I overbook myself, or why do I try and fit too many things into my calendar? I probably learned to cut that back, but more so out of my situation at the moment, where I have a 1.5-year-old. So he dictates how busy my schedule is. So yes and no. I suppose I was trying to stretch myself too much and try and be all to everybody, and then actually not enjoy everything that I was doing. I didn't enjoy my schoolwork because I was rushing away to rugby. I didn't enjoy my coaching because I never got to coach in school, which is always a really fun element of work, is working with the teams and mingling with them in a different environment. And then I didn't enjoy my rugby because I was so, I suppose, under pressure with everything. And I suppose now I can identify myself when I'm getting there and I need just to pull back. Or I figured out that I need more people here. So last week, for example, it was quite a busy week between work and other commitments on. And I just rang my mom, rang my sister, rang my husband. And I was like, look, I need everyone tonight for an hour if you can just help. So I know I suppose better strategies how to deal with it and how to lean on the people that you have around you and try not to do it all and just crumble under trying to do it all yourself. And a lot of my schedules I can dictate at the moment. The fact that I'm injured and not under a strict regime of going to training, I can, I suppose, fit my training schedule into my schedule, which works at the moment. Now that'll obviously it'll change once I'm back on pitch and once I'm in regular training. But I suppose I can schedule and I can figure out, okay, this one thing a day is more than sufficient to try and do, or when there is more than one thing a day, that I call on the people that are around me. And I suppose that's one thing that I've learned from the whole burnout situation.
So I was going to ask, what's your biggest challenge as an athlete, and how did you overcome it? Would it be the burnout, or would it be the injury that you currently have?
It's quite different, yeah. The burnout probably not, but that probably taught me more than it probably benefited me in the long run as to how to manage myself and my scheduling, and how to know, I suppose, spot the signs of when you're about to burn out. The most challenging part probably though was juggling two careers essentially. The Irish team have gone professional since I suppose one got pregnant and two got injured, but to be able to focus solely on rugby is just something that I could never imagine. We used to go into camp on a Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. I'd come back into work on a Monday through Wednesday and do it all over again for, let's say, the 6 or 8 weeks that you're in the Six Nations campaign. And it's quite intense, but it just allows you have to be super organised in advance. So I'm always anticipating that I'm going to get selected, but planning my work that I'm going to get selected, that I need to get the content covered in school. So it's quite difficult balancing. You're trying to be the best at your job and trying to get your students as best prepared as you can, knowing that you won't be there for approximately 8 weeks of the term, while also focusing on representing your country, which is massive. And you don't want to slip up or be bad or be tired or be injured at the same time. So that probably was the most challenging. And I suppose not getting to do anything else in between, because when you're not focusing on work, you're doing rugby. And when you're not doing rugby, you're focusing on work. And I suppose it leaves very little for your social time. It leaves very little for the people in your life, or just a little bit of downtime. It's just consuming. So managing that was probably the hardest thing. But I have another challenge now, in that I'm in a completely different life, in that I'm injured currently, but I also have a baby, and it's now the challenge of priorities. And it's a hard mix at the moment because, I'm quite selfish in that I want to get back on pitch. I want to get my knee right. I want to do my rehab as best I can. But I don't want to sacrifice time with my son when I've been at work all day. So I suppose it's the challenge of when can I fit this in to get the most out of my evenings, to see and spend time with my son and to not be gone every weekend. And also just, I suppose, not burn out again. I have a full-time job. I'm trying to do my training and it's quite intense. Like, I don't know if you've ever had an ACL rehab, but, I have a week by week plan to do and I've never been injured. Thankfully, my entire career, I've been very lucky with injuries. But this is really much a challenge because it's quite individual. I feel very individually driven. I'm very lucky that I have a really good physio and S&C team who are checking in with me all the time. And I've realized that I need that I wouldn't make it as an individual athlete. I know that I'm very much a team athlete. And this has proven it, that I like to train with people, for people, having people motivating me. And even though I'm quite motivated myself, I like to have a bit of challenge and people around me. So this ACL recovery is definitely one of my biggest challenges. I'm 7 months post-op at the moment. But I also have a brand new job that I'm trying to, do my best at. I have a baby. So this is probably more challenging because it's newer to me. I'm trying to juggle everything, a new injury, a new baby and a new job. Whereas playing rugby for Ireland and teaching was difficult, but it happened year in, year out. And I was kind of used to the challenge of the busyness around those periods. So I suppose with every chapter of life brings new challenges. And this is definitely a new challenge.
Yeah, I mean, I'm tired and you're just talking about yourself. But you also mentioned representing your country. You wanted to go to the Olympics. Unfortunately, your team didn't make it there, but then you did represent your country at the World Cup in 2017. What was that like?
Oh, that was so special. And I suppose it was my first year in the squad, which made it even more special that, I'm so lucky to be here, that I'm really only playing 15s rugby for 1 year. And here I am in a World Cup squad and in a home World Cup, which meant that your family got to be there with you and your friends got to be there with you. And it was in Dublin, which was my, I suppose, hometown at the time. So a lot of my work colleagues had gone and a lot of my students went. So it was really special to be able to do that. Obviously, it wasn't the result or the campaign that we wanted. We didn't qualify for that World Cup as a result of our seedings and how we finished in that final game, which then involved another Olympic qualification process, which I suppose brought pressure among us as a squad to try and qualify for that World Cup. Then COVID came and we were still training for this qualification process, and we trained and we trained and we trained, I suppose not knowing when we would be back on pitch, when we would be in pre-season, when we would be in season again. So it was quite difficult that way, but we had a goal of qualifying for that World Cup in New Zealand, and then the World Cup got pushed out another year. So our Olympic qualifiers got pushed out another year. And it was probably a mentally fatiguing time to try and stay motivated and like that individually stay motivated, because with COVID, it was quite a lot of individual training. But I suppose it was a long process of qualifiers, and we didn't end up qualifying then when we went to Parma in September 21, which was probably the lowest point of my career, really. It was just, I suppose, I felt like we were part of the non-qualification in 2017 in that home World Cup. And then I was now part of the non-qualification again for the World Cup, So it was two elements that I had a part in, and I didn't get to, I suppose, do it, not just for me, but for the rest of the squad, the players that have gone before us, the players that are coming after us, knowing that these young girls don't have a team that are qualifying for a World Cup and looking up to you. I suppose it was so emotional a few weeks ago when the Irish team did qualify for that World Cup next year in England. And I suppose it made me feel really proud, but also really sad that I couldn't have done that for other girls in the way that I felt emotionally and happy for them, that I wasn't part of that team that could rectify that and try and help, I suppose, the future of women's rugby. But yeah, it's super that it's on the up and that they have qualified and that they finished third place in the Six Nations. So it is more positive, and an Irish team will be going to the World Cup next year.
So you mentioned that was a low point. Is there a highlight, a specific highlight of your career?
Oh God, like I suppose playing for Ireland in my time, we didn't really win very much. So I can't say it was like winning a Six Nations or winning a World Cup. But there's so many amazing memories. Like, so lucky to play in front of a massive crowd in Twickenham against England. And we had a really good performance in one of those November international games. It was fantastic. That was probably one of my favourite games to play, even though it was like such an excruciating game. Like, it was horrible and we were so close to them at half time. But I was going to try that day, and I suppose I felt like I had an impact in that game. I loved captaining Munster. I think even though rugby wasn't my sport, I still grew up as a Munster rugby fan, supporting the likes of Marcus Horan and Ron O'Gara in their heyday when Munster were winning Champions Cups. So even though rugby wasn't my thing, I suppose there was a bit of rugby in my blood with Munster rugby, and getting to captain them was a massive, massive achievement for me personally. To lead Munster out, that was just before COVID happened. And yeah, I suppose as time went on, I realised maybe I got older and wiser in my time, and I knew that, you know, there mightn't be too many games left in my career. You never really know when your last game is, but I suppose at the end of my career, I think I took it all in more. And I took it all, you know, I took each game in, I took the warm-up in, I took the crowd in, instead of just, you know, trying to blur the crowd out because it affects your nerves. I was trying to just take it all in. So even though one of my last games was in England, it actually was my last game for Ireland in England, but there was a massive sellout crowd in Leicester and the stadium was packed. And I remember just walking out and taking it all in and saying, look at this crowd, and enjoying it. And the game didn't go our way that day, but enjoying the experience of every game that you represent your country for it's so special. And I suppose you don't know when your last game is, and I'm really glad that I did start to take it all in, not knowing when your last game was going to be.
Are you a brand seeking an influencer to enhance trust and visibility with your audience? Or are you an elite athlete eager to feature in advertisements or promote products on social media? We're a unique platform connecting top-tier athletes with brands for impactful partnerships in your area. For brand managers, we simplify dealings with athletes and celebrities. For athletes, we offer opportunities to collaborate with like-minded brands. With a strong global community, Sport Endorse is your gateway to success. www.sportendorse.com, where brands can book a free demo on the platform while athletes can sign up for free.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned that you didn't obviously win too much representing your country, but getting there itself is an incredible achievement. But then you also mentioned that women's rugby in Ireland is obviously taking a step forward now. It's improving. What do you think are the sort of next steps to increase and further women's rugby in Ireland?
Yeah, God, if I had the answer, they would they'd be coming knocking on my door. I suppose it's retaining players in Ireland to create a really high quality league. We know we have so many of our girls in the UK who are playing at a really high standard week in, week out. And you know, they've played the Six Nations and they've gone back into their Premiership games at the moment, whereas the Irish girls have played their Six Nations and they've no AIL to go back to. So I suppose the structures in relation to our club, the club scene in Ireland, just need to be looked at around that, and to have the best players playing in the country and to make it an enticing competition for them to return back to. It'll make it easier to have camps. It'll keep the cost of it down. It means you've more centralised players, because I suppose you're not going to give contracts to the players that are out in the UK. Having everyone in Ireland, and I suppose I know the Welsh girls speak about it as well. A lot of the Welsh players are playing in the Prem. Therefore, they don't have a lot of players playing in their Welsh league. So I suppose it's the benefit of having a massively strong structure in the UK that it draws players from all over the world to play in the Prem. But I suppose at the detriment of some other nations, at the other nations' leagues. But the future is so bright in that each year there's girls coming into the Irish squad that are ready-made superstars. Like, we have 2 or 3 this season, like Katie Corrigan, Aoife Wafer, that have come through the ranks of the underage system and that are ready to rip it up against the teams in the Six Nations from get-go. And I suppose that's the difference, is that the future is so bright and that the players are coming through the pathways. I spoke about my pathway, which it was a backwards pathway. But these girls have come through provincial structures, through club structures, played IL, played under 18 inter-pros, played senior inter-pros. And finally they've learned all their mistakes, made all their mistakes at an underage level, that they're ready to play at a top level Six Nations World Cup, whatever it may be, on the global stage. Whereas I had to learn a mistake about, how to defend against France because, I haven't had many other opportunities to do so. You're thinking and learning under pressure, and making mistakes for the first time in a really important, crucial Six Nations game. So in one way, I feel so jealous that these girls have had such an opportunity to be as good as they can be. But in other ways, it's so exciting for the future of women's rugby that they are, if there's 1 or 2 a year, like that is phenomenal for the future and the growth of the game.
Do you think you'll ever take up a coaching role or something like that in rugby?
Yeah, like I'm kind of stuck as to what I want to do at the moment. Like there's goals, and people always talk about SMART goals and realistic. And is it realistic for me to play for Ireland? I don't know. Is it a goal? Yes. So when it comes to coaching, I kind of don't want to put that in my head because I still don't know if my goal is attainable or reachable or realistic. I suppose my situation has changed when it comes to, I don't live in Dublin anymore, so training out in the HPC isn't as easy. I'm a 3-hour drive away. I have a full-time job that's new, so I need this job. So taking up a contract isn't an option, even if I got offered one. And I have a little baby who is the most important thing in my life right now, whereas sport was the most important thing, and I was the most important thing in my life and my career. Whereas now I'm not, and I need to look at those and figure out, is my rugby career still there? And two, then if it isn't, then I can look at being a coach. So I'd like to think, one, I'll try and get back on pitch and try and get back with Munster this season. With I suppose at that stage I'll be nearly 11 months post-op. So I should be, hopefully, if everything goes smoothly, on track for getting back on pitch. And we can look at it, we can see and take this year as it comes. But coaching, it's something that I love doing. I'm working here in school. And even though it wasn't rugby I was coaching, there's such a drive in being able to bring my experiences from high performance environment, especially to girls. I would never have considered myself a feminist, but I think now I am, and I think I'm really pushy towards females and equal opportunities when it comes to sport, and about them getting exactly what their male counterparts are getting, and them getting exactly the opportunities that their male counterparts are getting. And I suppose I came from a world where in a way we were equal. We got exactly what we wanted to be in a high performance environment, and I try and replicate that as much with my coaching and giving the girls the opportunity. And this was only a schools team in West Clare, but I wanted to bring what I had, my experiences of high performance when it comes to, your warm-up or your recovery or your fueling or your nutrition or the mental side of things that I suppose I've experienced throughout my career, to girls in West Clare, because I was a girl who grew up in the middle of nowhere with a dream to play football for Clare. I didn't have a dream to play rugby for Ireland, but with a bit of motivation, someone spotting a talent in me, I got to heights that I never thought I could get to. And if I can inspire one other girl from a rural background who never thought there was a dream out there possible to reach something she never thought possible, well then, my job is done. My job isn't done, but my job, it's a nice thing to have, that you can inspire one person to do something that they never believed they could do.
Is this linked with your Tackle Your Feelings campaign that you speak a lot about?
Yeah, I suppose it is and it isn't. And I suppose the values of the Tackle Your Feelings campaign are, I suppose, at this stage ingrained in me. And I suppose it goes back to the resilience thing is one of the key things. And that's, I suppose, coming back from a few setbacks. And this injury is really testing that resilience, but also about managing the people around me and having a really good support system. And I spoke to you about last week was just a mental week, and I just needed everyone in my life just to come all hands on deck and help me out. And that's I suppose part of my well-being. Would I have imploded if I tried to do it myself? Yes. So it's acknowledging that having a really good environment around you, having a good support network, can help you in your day-to-day life, and being positive and grateful for things is another element of tackling your feelings. And the thing with Tackle Your Feelings is it's a mental well-being. And I always say to my students, or if I'm out in the school, what makes you happy? And do you want to be happier? And I suppose they're the key values that I look to for Tackle Your Feelings, that Are you, do you have a good support network? Do you have good friends? Do you have someone that you can call if you need help? What are you grateful for? And if they think of nothing, it's like, well, what's one good thing that happened today? And thinking glass half full instead of glass half empty, because there's some good in every day. And it's just about making people sit down and not feel sorry for themselves and realize that I have one good thing. I've got a good friend, or it's my birthday next week, or I went out for dinner last week, or something good in a day that to make them think about it. So the skills of tackle your feelings is life skills, essentially. It's not just a module that we teach to TYs in schools around Ireland. It's not just a couple of ambassadors talking in a campaign. It's stuff that I genuinely bring into my day-to-day life around being positive, having a really good support network, being grateful, and including, I suppose, a variety of those different skills in my campaign.
So yeah, this tackle your feelings. Did this something that you learned through your injury, and because I'm sure it affected you mentally a little bit, not being able to be on the pitch? Is this something you've learned through that?
Yeah, it is. It's through my entire career. Like I said, I feel like experiences allow you to put theory into practice. There's the theory behind tackle your feelings. Like I said, there's a gratitudeness, there's a positive talk, there's a goal setting, there's all that. But it's nice to be able to put those elements of the campaign into your day-to-day life, like goal setting. Okay, a target of not just my injury, but a target of, okay, I'll try and get back playing for Munster, or I'll try and get running by month 9, or whatever it is. It's goal setting, and that's a part of tackling feelings. It's about being positive. That I have days when my knee is not going very well, but it's about thinking of, well, what did go well today? And it's the changing your outlook around it to the glass half full. Like I said, it's the having the people around me when I feel like I'm under pressure, whether that's my colleagues, whether that's students in school, if I need, to set up a training session and I need 10 people to help. It's about, I suppose, creating the communication skills around it. So it's not just my injury. I think it's just my life skills in general. I'm so lucky that I've been involved with Tackle Your Feelings for, God, probably 4 or 5 years at this stage. And I've been able to embed those theories of the program into my day-to-day life through sport mainly. But it's not just targeted through sport. And that's the thing that we try and say, is that like Tackle Your Feelings is about wanting to be happier. And if you're happier, you can do this, this, and this, and you can use this skill, and this skill to make you happier today. And they're not complicated theories.
And do you have any sort of role models it must be hard a little bit to have role models, because obviously you started off Gaelic football, then rugby, and you're also a teacher. So I'm not sure there'll be a specific role model unless it's a family member, but is there any role models or influences specifically that you sort of look to?
Yeah, like I didn't grow up saying I wanted to be, I don't know, Fiona Coughlin, because I didn't support rugby when I was younger, and there wasn't quite a lot of female athletes in the media at the time when I was growing up. I suppose massive influences on my life were my mother and my family, in that my older brother played football and we traipsed around the country after him, watching him play matches. And similarly, my 3 cousins were on the Clare ladies football team. And like I said, that was my dream. And one girl wrote in my autograph book one time, said, "You will play football for Clare someday." And that just was like the dream cemented in my life, that she wrote it in an autograph book, I'm going to play for Clare. And therefore, like, it was almost like she wrote it down for me and my path was only going to go one way. So like some people talk about like Katie Taylor and really massively famous role models, but I just had local female athletes around me to inspire me at the time. And something so insignificant to that player, who's just a regular person, she wasn't a professional player, but she took the time to write in my autograph book to say, like, thanks for coming to the game, best of luck, and hope to play for Clare someday. But it was so insignificant to her, but so significant in my life, that it was almost just a way for me to make that dream come true. So it was those kind of role models. But my mother was massively involved in, I suppose, in our sporting career. When I say our, I mean myself and my sister. She played football in Camogie for Clare, and she was part of the AFL in Australia for 5 or 6 seasons. She was with the Adelaide Crows and won 2 premierships over there. So while we both grew up in West Clare, we both went completely different ways into professional sport, and we were massively influenced on each other as well, the same way, because there was only a year between us. We live in the middle of nowhere. there was nothing else to do except kick a ball around with each other. So it was almost I had no other choice but to play football with her because she would kick it around. That's all we would do. My brother similarly would just kick a ball at me. And if I didn't catch it, well, I just got hit in the face. So you had to learn fairly quickly when the ball is getting kicked at your face when you're 9 or 10. So influences are my family. And that's what I mean about my family, is that my brother, my sister, but also my mum, for bringing us everywhere. And I suppose being tough on us when we were bad and telling us that we were bad and letting her down almost with our performances, but by being our biggest supporter at the same time around thinking we were great when we often weren't great. And she always, and I said this in my Tackle Your Feelings videos, she has a saying before every match she'd ring, Ireland, club, Clare, no matter what game it was, it's be as good as your mother thinks you are. Because she thinks we're great, regardless how bad we are. And I think all mothers, and actually after becoming a mother now, I understand the saying, be as good as your mother thinks you are, because they genuinely do think that you're great.
Are you going to sort of not push your son, but sort of bring him up in the sort of sporting environment that you got brought up in?
Yeah, well, look, his dad, my husband, and him, myself, both play sport, and it's important. And I'm a PE teacher, so I obviously understand the values of sport and exercise and physical activity. I will direct him in a way where he wants to go, and I will probably direct him more in a sporting career because I know the benefits of it. Just even teaching for the last decade, like I see the impact the sport has on students and the way that they manage themselves, the way that they get organised, the way that they can manage multiple things in their lives, their organisation, their dedication, their discipline. It's not just about winning and losing. There's so much other facets to sport that it teaches you, and you can tell students that play sport because they're resilient and they're I suppose outgoing, they're confident, they're leaders. It's just so many other skills. So while I would love him to play sport and that be a career, if he plays sport and learns even 5 of those things I've just mentioned, it's going to, I suppose, help him to be a complete and whole person. So without pushing him too much, I will obviously push him to a little because I understand the benefits of physical activity and what it does for young people.
And what advice can you give to girls out there who want to succeed in women's rugby in Ireland or anywhere?
Advice, I suppose, is get involved with a club. The lucky girls across the country now have numerous clubs. There's so many Give It a Try programs out there to join, especially this time of year when the season is kind of ramping down. They're doing a lot of taster sessions and sessions where it's kind of easy to make mistakes and to give it a try, as the saying goes. So get involved with your local club, and I suppose then aim high. I never thought I could play for Ireland, but I think that was just my mentality, and my mindset was just trying to do the best that I could. So just aim high if you want to get to Ireland. I suppose find the pathways to get there. Like I remember when I came back from a year away from rugby, I wanted to play for Ireland, but I contacted the head coach and said, how do I get back on this Irish team? And he said, you play club, you play province, and if you're impressing, then you'll come back into Ireland. So it's having a goal in your head and wondering, how do I get there? Is it through playing my club? Is it moving to an AIL club? Is it, going to meet an individual coach about individual skills? For example, if you're a 10, that you link in with the kicking coach and that you make sure that your kicking is the best out there. One of our coaches used to say, don't just be good at everything, make something your super strength. And you need to try and figure out what is your super strength and be better than anybody else out there. So when it came to my super strength as a fullback, I knew that under a ball that was coming there, I knew I could read it properly, and I knew that I could stop it bouncing. So I knew positionally where to be, and under a high ball, that was my super strength. And I suppose you have to pick something and try and be better than anybody else out there. So yeah, my advice to young people would just be find your super strength and be better than anybody else.
That is good advice. So I'm a bit conscious of time. Obviously, you have to leave it in 7 minutes. So I'll move on to Sport Endorse's Fast 5. Obviously fast. Try and answer the questions as quick as possible. If you could be another athlete, who would you be?
I would love to be Rashida Adeleke because her life just looks amazing. And she's super fast and setting world records like no time.
What is a brand you use that people would be surprised at?
Oh, God, that's a hard one. Fast 5, a brand that I use. Nothing surprising. I'm a PE teacher and I just live in sportswear. Makeup I use. Sculpted by Amy, makeup all the time.
Okay. If you were not an athlete, what would you be?
I would be
apart from a teacher or something that you already do, obviously.
Beautician.
Okay. What is your favourite movie?
The Notebook.
Okay, that's a good movie. What is your party trick?
I can juggle.
You can juggle. Normally I'd say, can you do it right now? Obviously.
I don't have any. No, I don't have anything here. I only have bottles. I can only do it with a ball. I can juggle.
And obviously we have the question our last guest left. What is your why? Why are you a rugby player?
My why probably changed over the years, but recently my why is to inspire girls to be something that they never thought they could be.
And what is your question for our next guest?
Who's your toughest opponent?
Who's your toughest opponent? And what would yours be?
Oh, any of the English team.
Okay, well, Eimear, thank you so much for coming on. It's been an absolute pleasure speaking to you, and I wish you all the best in obviously your recovery and hopefully getting back on the pitch. All of Eimear's links will be in the bar below, so make sure to go check her out. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for watching the Athlete Sit Down, brought to you by Sport Indoors. To book any of our athletes featured on our podcast, contact us via our website, www.sportindorse.com, or via our email, hello@sportindorse.com. Also, don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss out on any of our upcoming episodes.